Mr. President, will the gentleman, Senator Honasan, sponsor of the motion or the movement, yield to one or two questions?
With pleasure, Mr. President, especially from the distinguished former Senate President, now Minority Floor Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. First, we just have to reiterate on record that martial law or any extension thereof under decided cases must be based on actual invasion or rebellion. As we earlier stated, the previous standard of imminent danger is both on the need, on the length of time, of the duration, and the coverage. Moreover, Mr. President, I think we all can all agree that the reason why martial law was limited to 60 days on its initial proclamation is in order that the decision of the President can be subjected to regular review. And that is why the Supreme Court is given the authority to look into the factual basis of martial law. And in the case of Congress, on the extension, it is Congress who determines, not the President, it is Congress who determines the duration of the extension. The Constitution is very clear on that. It is Congress who determines what the extension will be. Given all of these principles, would the gentleman agree that it is consistent with this principle that we should not be remiss in our duty to, one, check regularly on the exercise of this extraordinary power, and second, this can be done only where we have a limited period for declaring martial law, and so that we will have an opportunity to call again on the executive branch to justify any extension in the future. Would the gentleman agree with that, Mr. President?
Mr. President, in principle, I would agree with formulating, if it is not yet in our present laws, a system for checks and balances. But again, I limit myself with all due respect to my own personal experience on the ground. We operate under a very porous social, economic, and political environment. And if this were not enough, we are burdened by the absence of a consolidated mechanism for timely, accurate, and complete information that will allow not only Congress, but our decision makers to make rational, informed, intelligent, long-term policy decisions. But of course, Mr. President, having said that, I have already decided in my mind after hearing the best available information, and I will vote accordingly. But let me add also, Mr. President, that it is the President with his constitutional prerogatives who has requested for this. And it is, I think, the mandate of Congress to make sure that these powers are not abused. So it is in this context that I submit not to our individual inclinations, but to the collective and consensual wisdom of both chambers.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, there is no dispute that indeed the President has requested for the extension. However, I don't think it is a disrespect to the Chief Executive if we exercise that prerogative to fix the period other than what the President has indicated. And in fact, Mr. President, if you look at the media reports in the past 4 weeks or 5 weeks, for example, the media is replete with statements on the part of the Defense Secretary, of the President, that the conflict in Marawi may be finished shorter than the requested December 31, 2017 timeframe suggested by the President in his letter. On June 27, the good Secretary of National Defense said, quote, the month-long conflict in Marawi may be finished in a week or two. On July 4, 2017, the Department of National Defense was reported to have said government troops took control of a Maoti terrorist group stronghold in Marawi City, Battle Zone. The Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces, General Anyo, said that the Maute has been reduced to holding an area of only 1 or 2 square kilometers, about the size of 2 to 3 intramuros walled city, consisting of about 4 barangays. The President also was quoted as having said that he needs 10 to 15 days more to solve the Marawi crisis. And to quote him, he said, I think in 10 to 15 days it's already be okay. This was on July 11. And therefore, all of the statements, Mr. President, confirms the fact that indeed December 31 is too long a period, and that will not allow us to check on the need to further check whether or not the circumstances of actual rebellion continue to exist between now and December 31. In fact, some of our colleagues were quoted as saying this week that the President told them that 60 days extension of martial law is okay. And this happened, I understand, in a dinner which some of the legislators had with the President. Under all of these circumstances, Mr. President, it is our respectful submission that we should not abdicate upon our authority to regularly check on the executive whether or not there is a need for further extension of martial law after the period that we will be prepared to grant to the President. And my submission, Mr. President, with all due respect, is that martial law extension under these circumstances should not exceed 60 days. And therefore, I would ask our good gentleman sponsor, Muban, whether or not he would accept this amendment of limiting the extension to 60 days.
Mr. President, before I respond directly to your question, please allow me to share this not only with the Chamber but with the good gentleman. We have called the security sector to task for what we admit are conflicting statements. In fact, we have been very, very straightforward. We have asked them to make sure that this is inculcated in the designated spokesperson. To my mind, Mr. President, the job of soldiers or policemen is not to explain policy, but to implement policy. We must allow the civilian political leadership to do the explaining. This has generated, admittedly, some conflict. And to add to the confusion, we have media reports. I am not implying anything about the freedom of the press. That is based on incomplete, inaccurate information that subjects a developing situation to unwarranted and premature trial by publicity. Now, let me add to that. You were present, Mr. President, during the under the radar first meeting of the Intelligence Oversight Committee.
I'm sorry?
The first meeting of the Intelligence Oversight Committee, which we tried to keep.
No, I was not present, Mr. President, for the record.
Well, I stand corrected. But we proceeded with that meeting using an observation of the good gentleman that we must assume that such meetings should be conducted in executive session. Precisely, we have asked not only for purposes of accounting and auditing, the special accounting and auditing procedures for intelligence funds, for the intelligence community, to augment the efforts of our men on the ground in terms of operation, by making sure that the old habits of keeping information to themselves would be discarded. Now, having said that, I have no problem with these proposed amendments at the proper time. But as it is, my task is to present as straightforward as possible a decision to the Chamber on whether, as it is written, we will allow the extension of martial law up to 31 December 2017. I will limit myself to that.
Mr. President, well, the gentleman has said very clearly that he has no problem with the proposed period of 60 days. Under these circumstances, at the appropriate time, I believe it is now appropriate that I propose an amendment to the motion that the extension of the martial law will be up to 60 days from today. That is the motion that I am presenting, that is the amendment I am presenting, Mr. President, to the motion of the good gentleman Mukan. As he said, he has no problem with the extension, it's just at the appropriate time. And that is why I believe that the appropriate time is now for this representation to present the proposed amendment for the consideration of the sponsor.
Well, Mr. President, I do not want to burden the issue. But since I said early on that I have already a position on the matter, I will be contradicting myself if I subordinate the collective wisdom and judgment of the Chamber, the majority, to even a proposed amendment like that. So with all due respect, I would defer that decision until the proper time when the Chamber can resolve it individually.
I know from the gentleman, Mr. President, when is the appropriate time that an amendment to the motion can be presented? Just for our information, Mr. President. Because my interpretation is that now is the appropriate time, but I may be wrong.
Majority Leader, Mr. President, I will subordinate myself to my chain of command, the majority for will.
Mr. President, the Commission, General, thank you. The appropriate time, Mr. President, perhaps, is when and if we defeat the motion. Because the motion is to approve the proposal of the President to extend it to 150 days. Now, if the body decides later to vote against the 150 days request, then the proper time to propose another day, time frame would be the proper time. Because the motion is very clear, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I think the proper, with all due respect to the learned majority leader, we have proposed an amendment. If the gentleman mover, Senator Honasan, will not accept this amendment, so that's it. But I believe we are, it's not correct for us to vote first on the requested 150 days. If Senator Honasan will accept the amendment and there is no objection, then we vote on the motion as amended by this representation. But if not, then we may have to, if necessary or if proper, we may have to present it to a vote by the body. So our position, Mr. President, is that we inquire from the movant whether or not he accepts our amendment.
Mr. President, we have known each other for a long time.
Very long time, Mr. President.
Too long, in fact. It always, as the majority floor leader eloquently said, it always pains me to disagree with the better wisdom. Okay. So, I do not accept.
Yes. All right. Let's know. I have no problems with the gentleman not accepting. That's part of our parliamentary debate here. Now, since the gentleman has accepted, has objected, has not accepted our amendment, we move that we divide the House as to whether the amendment should be approved. Before we vote on the entire motion of the gentleman sponsor of the motion. We submit, Mr. President. Majority Leader.